Thanks. Thank you for coming. Who's doing Node in their day job? Okay, a couple of people. Who would rather do Elixir? Hopefully all of you. All right. So first, a couple of things about me. I worked at this company called Travel Tech Deluxe for the last 2 years, or 2.5 years. And last year in September, I was invited to become part of the Ash core team. And I'm Barnabas J on all the platforms I'm on, but I don't really do a lot of social media. So if you want to find me, I'm probably in the Ash Discord. And before I joined this company, I worked at another agency and did a lot of full stack work. But most of my time I spent doing React. And here I was mainly doing backend development. And at the beginning, it was also Node, and then we switched to Elixir. And that's our journey. And just a little bit about the content. So I'm going to show you how the system looked before we introduced Elixir. Then we're going to talk shortly about why we chose Elixir, how we went about choosing libraries and frameworks, how we deployed it, what we did for testing, a little bit about observability, the conclusion in the end, and then you can ask a couple of questions if you want. All right, so this is how it looked when I came into the company. So what we do is we work with a travel agency in Germany, and they built the backend system or the back office application before I came. Before that, they were pretty much doing all of their stuff in Excel, and they took all of the processes and put it into a Node application. And that's pretty much just creating the office for the customers, managing the bookings, and sending out invoices and stuff like that. And the front ends were all done in Next.js with React. And there was a little bit of customer-facing front end where the travel agents could send out links to the customers, and they could go there and check out their offers, download the PDFs, and sign them and send them back so they would accept the offer. And still better what they had before. But that was the beginning. And we used Postgres, so that already worked pretty well with Elixir, and S3 for document storage. And what we did is we used the backend would send signed URLs to the front end. Oh, okay. Okay. And so the client could connect directly to S3 and upload and download files the way they needed to. The backend was built in Nest.js. I don't know if you know that or heard of it. It kind of feels like Spring from the Java world, a lot of classes, a lot of annotations. And the front ends were React with Next.js. And the problems that we had, especially with the backend, is we used this library called Nest.js query that would go through the Nest.js classes, look for annotations, and build the graphical schema from that and expose that. And because there is not really a compile step in JavaScript, all of that had to happen when you started the application, and that led to the application needing 1 to 2 minutes to start up. And because you kind of needed to start the application a test for end-to-end tests and stuff, the test became really, really slow. And that ate through all our GitHub runner minutes. And then first we tried to spin up our own virtual server on DigitalOcean, installing the GitHub runner stuff and running the tests there. But after 12 hours, they were still not finished. So we kind of decided, I don't know, we didn't want to spend too much time on this whole thing anymore. And then there was also during development. I mean, some of those things were probably self-inflicted, to be honest, but from time to time you get these cyclic dependencies errors when the application were starting, and it was really, really hard to debug. And all of that led to very slow feature development, so we decided we had to change things up. And we landed on Elixir. And there's this book called Adopting Elixir. It's a couple of years old, but I think it still holds up pretty pretty well. So go ahead and read that if you want. And like we were also at the position where the back office application was pretty stable, and the travel agents could do their work on that. And the next thing would be to have more end customer facing features. And we wanted to expose that in an app that would also run on mobile phones. And because like with the back office application, there were a couple dozen people that worked on it day to day. So the traffic was pretty stable. And we expected a lot more traffic with the app because there could be potentially a lot more users. And we thought that the Beam is a great platform. One of the things I really like about the Beam, and I don't think you get anywhere else, is the preemptive scheduling. That makes it really great because in Node, if you wanted, like the next thing we would do is like have self-booking in the app, and then we had to import all of the hotels into our database. And if we wanted to do that in Node.js, we still would have to create a new service that would import all of that, because if you would have run it in the same app that also served like the request, it would kind of starve out that stuff. So a new service was coming anyway, so why not do it in Elixir? And like we were also a really, really small team. We were just 3 people, and two of us wanted to do Elixir, so we were a majority. Yeah, I mean, we were lucky in that way, so we didn't have to convince that many people. A lot of other people have harder time doing that. And there are also a couple case studies on the Elixirlang homepage that showcase a lot of the great capabilities of what you can do with Elixir. So next thing was adding the mobile app, and we did this by introducing the Elixir server and the capacitor app, and the capacitor app wrapped a new endpoint that we added to the Next.js app, and that part would exclusively talk to the Phoenix Docker container and would read data from the Postgres database and expose that to the front end with a GraphQL API. We also had like the GraphQL API on the Node container. So our strategy was to create a fairly similar GraphQL API, so we could then start to move over requests from the old API to the new API without rewriting a lot of stuff in the front end. So next thing, choosing libraries and frameworks. And if you come into Elixir as a pretty new user, I think couple of things that you learn pretty quick is that you use Phoenix, you use Ecto, and you use Absinthe if you want to do GraphQL, and if you want to do background job processing, you use Oban. But then you get to the point where you implement your own logic, and if you just go with Phoenix, we checked out the generators, but they felt a bit bare bone, and a lot of stuff that we had to build on our own, or go and pick out another couple of libraries, like Flop, for example, for pagination stuff, Bodyguard for authorization. And we also looked at Commanded, but decided this was overkill for our use case and would also make it harder because we just wanted to rebuild what we already had, and that wasn't CQRS or everything. And then my colleague, he heard about Ash, and after looking at it a little bit, I was a bit skeptical in the beginning, but we still tried to go forward and implement the first couple of features with it. So we ran with Ash, and after like 2 months or so, we were like completely into Ash, and the last 2 years we've been going fully into Ash, doing everything with Ash, and it worked out really, really well for us. I often like to think about all the code that didn't have to write, and that's probably a lot. So the next thing that we did is we introduced booking in the app, and there were 2 steps to that. First, we would implement a self-booking process where we would work with an external provider, where we could get hotel information and then could book over their API. And to import all of the hotel data, we used Oban and put that into our database, make it searchable there. And then we exposed it in the app, and the people could use it, and then we would use Stripe to do the payments, and also had a couple of Oban jobs then that would create all the offers and bookings and everything after the checkout, and that worked really great. And the next thing was to get rid of the old offer pages and move them into the app as well, and just use the new API for that too. And we also made it so they didn't have to print out the PDFs and had to send them in. They could just accept the offer in the app, so that was also a pretty nice step. Then deployment. We deployed on DigitalOcean. We used their app platform, which is in a way kind of similar to Fly and stuff like that. You just have like a manifest in a Docker container, and then we make everything run for you. And for deploying, we used, for creating the Docker container, we used the guide on the Phoenix, in the Phoenix docs. And there's also, we did like manual deployments and migrations. You can put code into your app, and then you can, that's also one of the great things, you can connect the shell to the running instance and then just execute some commands, and that way we just ran the migrations using that shell. And the shell was also great for debugging from time to time, like changing the log level, for example, without redeploying the whole application. So I feel that's also like one of the superpowers that you get with using Elixir. And then the next step was, now we had a lot of the functionality in the Phoenix app, and we did some stuff, and we deleted some of the stuff in the old backend. But now we had to trigger some processes in Elixir when we did updates in Node, and we connected both of the backends. And the way we did this is that we had like an event table in the database, and the Node backend could write an event into it, like offer updated or offer created. And on the Elixir side, we had an Oban job that would just look for events that weren't processed yet. And if it saw any new processes, it would spawn different Oban jobs that would do the work that was required. And then it would just schedule itself again, so it would just run again and check for offers or for new events. Then testing, and like the one big thing is XUnit. So you do everything with XUnit, and it feels pretty good. I feel like in the beginning it's a bit different with the process model and how the tests get spawned and everything, and you have to, with the setup and the teardown, you might have to look a little bit into how that works to get everything figured out, but I think you'll get there. Then we used Smokestack. That's a library that's in the Ash ecosystem, and we started using Ex Machina first to create like test data. Then we used some stuff that was built into Ash, and then we landed on Smokestack. This library came out like a half year after we started working with Ash. And here you can have these factories where you give it a Ash resource, and then you can specify these attributes that are on the resource and give it functions to generate the test data. And the nice thing about this is, because it knows all of the fields from the Ash resource, for the attributes that you don't specify, it will just randomly choose like strings for string attributes or numbers for number attributes, and you could just have some of the attributes to a specific value if you need that. We also used mock and mocks for mocking stuff, and mock is a bit more liberal in what you can do. This is an example with mock, the mock library, and you just can go in and mock pretty much any function you want and return different values. Mocks is a bit more strict in that you have to define behaviors, and you can only mock behaviors by replacing your implementation with a different one during test. And but whatever you need to do. Then for working with the external API, there were some, like for the importer, for example, we used XVCR to run the importer once during tests, record the response from the other API, and then it would be saved into a file, and the next time it wouldn't request, it wouldn't do a real request, it would just use the data that is already in the file, so it was pretty convenient for testing external APIs. Not the fastest thing, but for cases that you use it, it's pretty cool. Faker is just for generating test data. You saw it in the smokestack example before. It's also something that is known in the JS world, so that's why I put it up there. And then last but not least, and it's not really testing, more like linting. We also use Credo to enforce some of the conventions in our code base. While with Ash, we already had a pretty strict structure for where to put things, but even still, Credo was nice for some other things. And it also, like if you are a newcomer to Elixir, the descriptions that it gives you, like it's more like explanation why something is not good. So it's a good tool to also learn some best practices. All right. And the next thing that we did is now, after we had implemented a lot of stuff in the Phoenix app, because we also needed it to show the data to the customers, we now put in a connection between like the back office front end and the Phoenix app. And the way we did that is we had two code generator scripts in the front end that would generate different use whatever hooks for Apollo with the different schema definitions. And then we had a link in the Apollo chain that would check for a context, for a version field in the context. And if the version was 2, it would send over the request to the new API. And that way we were able to move over like form by form pretty much requests from the old API to the new API. And then a little bit about observability. One thing that we used was Promex, and Promex is like Prometheus and Grafana. And it comes with these predefined templates that you can just, if you want in the hosted Grafana, upload it. And it also, during startup, it would download a client that would push all the metrics to Grafana. And that way we were able to see like response times and memory usage and stuff like that on Grafana. That was pretty nice, and it was also not a lot of work to get it into the application. Then for error tracking, we used Sentry because we already used that for the front end as well. And it was also nice because it would notify us when an Oban job failed, for example, so we could go in and check what happened. And then one time we had a bit of a performance problem. And for Ash, there's this drop-in tracer library that would connect with AppSignal, and then we would get for the Ash actions where it spent time in the different like life cycles of the actions. And that way we were able to figure out where we spent a lot of time, and then we had to go in and do a little bit of data munching and stuff like that, and then we were able to fix that. Afterwards, we removed it again. But yeah, also in a pinch, it was good. Then we also have Rexbug, and Rexbug is a tracing library. And this is really cool because in the production shell that we talked about before, like one time we had the problem that the importer wouldn't do anything, but it didn't throw an error. But we didn't have a log statement for the response from the external API. So what we were able to do is just go in, say instead of map.get, put in the module that would make the request, and put this in, and then we could start the importer, and we would see the response that we get from the API here without changing any code or redeploying. And in the end, it was just because GraphQL is every time you do a GraphQL, you get a 200 response. We didn't check the error in the response. We just assumed it was correct, and then we were able to see the error message and fix the problem and redeploy it, and we didn't have to do any like debug deployments or something in between. We were just able to figure it out and fix it. Then honorable mentions, I guess. Phoenix Live dashboard, you pretty much get that out of the box. And there's also, I'm not sure if you just have to do something in the Postgres database to make it available, or if you have to install another package for Ecto, that would also add some Ecto metrics here, and that also helped us to get rid of some slow queries, because they would it would have a list of all the slowest queries, and then we could just look in and put in some indexes into the database and make it fast again. And then because we heavily used Oban, we also had the Oban Pro license and the Oban Web license, and this is like the dashboard. And this was really cool to see all the jobs and everything that was going on in the system, and seeing how the importer was running, and then it would create jobs for create offers or stuff like that. So pretty nice to watch from time to time. And the next step would be to remove the Node server altogether, and then we would be in an almost perfect world. But I think we have like 5% of the front-end queries from the back office are still going against the Node.js server, but it's just legwork of rewriting those to go to the new server. We just didn't have the time yet, but the functionality is now. Everything is in the Phoenix app. So hopefully the future looks bright. And then in conclusion, it felt really, really productive working in Elixir. Some of that was probably Ash, because, like, for example, with the GraphQL API, I now worked like 2 years with Ash, and I only had to write one Absint resolver, because at the time Ash didn't really support union types that well, and in Absint 1.7 they introduced this keyword in the schema where you could extend a type that would already exist. So I just put a new field onto a type that was already defined by Ash, and wrote a small function that would fill in that part with a union that I loaded from the database myself. But other than that, I never had to write Absint schema or resolvers or anything by hand. It all was just generated by Ash. So there's a lot of code that I didn't have to write. And then it's like, for us, it was absolutely stable. We had like some bugs, but they were our fault, and because we had like the logic wrong. And I mean, like one time we had this problem where we would sync contacts to HubSpot, and then HubSpot trigger a webhook on our end, and we would sync the contact again. So we had this endless loop, and it would pack the CPU to 100% for like 2 days, and nobody notices, because all the responses were still like in the 100 milliseconds or whatever. So nobody really noticed anything in production. So that was really nice. But looking at the thing and seeing what, yeah. And I think on the topic of stable, I want to mention that not only like the thing in production is stable, but also like your dependencies. If you come from the Node world, you need to update your dependencies like every day. And in Elixir, it's more like, yeah, okay, nothing changed, everything still works, and you're just good to go. So that's another thing that is really great about Elixir. And I think one of the greatest things is when Jose said that Elixir was done. I think because other languages like Java, they now release twice a year and put in feature over feature over feature. And we live in this world where everything is already working the way we wanted it to. And I mean, there are still like inventions going on, like NX and stuff like that, but the core is really, really stable, and you can just, what you learned like 2 years ago is still applicable today. So that's really nice. And I just want to say it was a joy working in Elixir for the last 2 years. And I don't want to do anything else ever again. And I know on the topic of coming from Node, like doing a lot of React before that, a lot of the things already felt kind of familiar, because React is in a way is a little bit functional, and we did a lot of stuff with Lodash, and so we were used to mapping over stuff and filtering stuff and everything. So some of the things feel pretty pretty familiar already. And the nice thing about like going with Phoenix and Ecto and everything is there's a lot of stuff in Elixir that you don't really need to know about at the beginning, because like for the last 2 years I didn't really have to ever start the process myself, because all of that is handled in Phoenix and in Oban, for example. So you don't need to know that just to get started, and you can be productive right away with just writing functions that turn data into other data, I guess. Yeah. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Do we have any questions?
Thank you. Small question. Do you plan to rewrite your React application to Phoenix Live View?
I think that, I mean, I'm also leaving the company. It's a side note. But I'm still going to do Elixir, so everything's good. But we were already thinking about doing that, because like for the back office for example, application, for example, I think there are a lot of nice features that you can get very easily with live view. Like if 2 people have opened the same offers, you could use presence to tell them, yeah, okay, if you change something there could be conflicts and stuff like that. And also if you have like, we have like a lot of tables with offers and everything. And if someone creates an offer and someone is looking at the table, we could stream in the new results. So those are all things that you could get very easily with live view. And I think also like having not having the complexity of keeping up the GraphQL API and everything would also be nice, even though it's just writing a couple of lines in Ash. Yeah.